Welcome to This Explainer. Go ahead and take a deep breath, settle in. Today we're exploring something incredibly validating, the science of intuitive introversion. Now, think of me as your supportive therapist as we go on this journey together. We are absolutely not here to fix a problem, okay? Because there isn't one. We're here to deeply understand how your mind is beautifully, uniquely wired for depth.
Have you ever felt like a total alien in a crowded room? You know the feeling. Imagine you're standing at a social gathering. There's this loud buzz of conversation, glasses are clinking all around you, and you're nodding, you're smiling at exactly the right moments. But internally, it's like you're watching the whole thing through a thick pane of glass. While everyone else is getting super energized by the noise, your mind is basically working overtime. You're busy decoding the forced laughs, sensing these subtle tensions between friends, analyzing every little shift in tone, and honestly, after just an hour of this, you are completely physically exhausted. If that visceral scenario sounds a little too familiar, I really need you to hear this right now. You are not broken. You're simply wired for depth in a world that, quite frankly, consistently rewards volume. For the longest time, you might have wondered if something was fundamentally wrong with you. But that exhaustion you feel, it's not a character flaw, it's not awkwardness, and it is certainly not you just being too sensitive. It's actually the very first clue to understanding how your intuitive, introverted mind truly operates. Section 1. The introverted brain, demystifying the exhaustion. Let's take that weight right off your shoulders by looking at your fatigue scientifically. See, an extroverted brain actually thrives in highly stimulating environments because it runs on dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. But your introverted brain, it has a much lower dopamine threshold. This means loud music, fast conversations, and chaotic environments push your nervous system to saturation incredibly fast. Instead, your nervous system prefers a totally different neurochemical pathway, acetylcholine. This chemical is closely linked to your parasympathetic rest and digest mode, and it activates during deep focus and quiet reflection. So biologically, your social energy levels are just built for a totally different pace. And this brings us to what's called the default mode network. When you're standing in that crowded room we talked about, your brain is relying heavily on this specific network. You aren't just taking things at face value. No, your mind is taking the long road to process the room. It's constantly scanning the emotional context, tirelessly searching for the underlying patterns and hidden meanings behind all that noise. You are, quite literally, processing data on a much deeper frequency than the people around you. Now add to that the function of mirror neurons. These are brain cells that biologically simulate the internal states of others. And because yours are highly active, you don't just passively notice what people are saying. You biologically simulate their internal states and their unspoken feelings simply by observing them. You are literally feeling what they're feeling, which naturally takes a massive toll on your daily social energy. The result of all this? You essentially become an emotional sponge with X-ray vision. When you combine that deep, relentless pattern recognition from your default mode network with the intense empathy driven by your mirror neurons, well, it makes complete biological sense why you're profoundly exhausted after a short time in a crowded space. Your brain is just doing an incredible amount of invisible heavy lifting. Section 2. The origin story. Intuition as protection. So while a lot of this depth is just your innate biology, for many intuitive introverts, this trait was sharply forged by early environments. If you happen to grow up in a chaotic, emotionally unpredictable, or maybe highly critical home, pattern recognition wasn't just some quirky talent. It was a survival skill. You needed to scan the room and stay safe. To protect yourself, your nervous system became finely, incredibly tuned to microsignals. You learn to spot tiny facial shifts and literally feel subtle tension in the air way before anyone said a single word. You became deeply observant because you absolutely had to be. But over time, that desperate childhood vigilance, reading those subtle tensions, decoding forced laughs, anticipating sudden emotional shifts, it slowly morphed into what feels like your profound intuition today. What started out as a necessary shield has beautifully, gracefully transformed into your incredible long-range vision. Section 3. Energy architecture. Healing without forcing. Here's the truth. You cannot heal or thrive by trying to force yourself into a louder, extroverted version of someone else. It just won't work. Instead, let's look at a gentle treatment plan I like to call energy architecture. This framework for daily recovery honors exactly how you're wired, and it focuses on 3 simple ways to practice better recovery: social budgeting, structured solitude, and layered boundaries. Let's break these down so you can easily apply them to your daily life.
First up is social budgeting. You must protect your recovery windows the exact same way an athlete protects their rest days. Seriously, you have a finite amount of social energy, especially considering the intense neurochemical toll we talked about earlier with acetylcholine and those highly active mirror neurons. So you need to allocate your social budget intentionally. Don't overbook your calendar, actually sit down, literally schedule your rest, and treat those windows as absolute non-negotiables.
Next up, we have structured solitude. Uninterrupted quiet time shouldn't just happen by accident. You really have to plan it. Try taking a weekly input detox from constant digital noise. Remember, your brain thrives in that acetylcholine-driven rest and digest mode. It desperately needs that quiet space to process and consolidate all of the deep, complex insights you've been absorbing all week long.
And the third step, building layered boundaries. As an intuitive introvert, you absolutely need to limit your exposure to things like chaotic news cycles and, very importantly, to people who unconsciously rely on you to regulate their own emotions. By setting these firm boundaries, you can maintain your beautiful, deep empathy without absorbing all the pain and chaos that simply isn't yours to carry.
Section 4. Transforming observation into creation.
This final phase is all about empowering you to externalize your rich inner world. We want to make sure all that heavy processing doesn't turn into a crushing internal pressure. So try this specific reflection exercise. Take some dedicated time to journal those hidden insights you're constantly picking up on. Engage in some form of creative output, whether that's writing, painting, or even just organizing your thoughts on paper. The goal here is to take your silent, deep internal observations and turn them into a tangible creative output. Get those brilliant observations out of your head and into the world. Your unique contribution matters so much right now because, let's be honest, the world does not suffer from a shortage of noise. It suffers from a desperate shortage of reflection. Your ability to see the patterns that everyone else completely misses, to feel the undercurrents others just ignore, and to actually pause before reacting. That is not a weakness. That is your long-range vision. Depth is your ultimate power. Which brings us to a final question for you to sit with today. How does your intuition show up in your daily life? Really take a moment to reflect on your own quiet strengths. You do not have to disappear into the noise anymore. I hope this explainer has helped you feel seen, scientifically validated, and reminded you of your inherent quiet power. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep embracing your extraordinary depth.